Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the HydragonsBreath, welcoming you back to Warthunder. Now I know you're all looking and you're like, this is the same tank. Yeah, it is. And so is this. This is a very similar vehicle, but I'm not going to be playing these this morning. I do have something for you, however. I have my main grievances with this Italian tech tree thus far. And I say thus far because I assume these things will be changed. But let's just start with the light tank line. Now, there's no vehicles that I think are missing here. Nothing specifically missing, at least. But there are some vehicles that I think don't deserve to be here. The first of them being this Semavente Da 90mm. This is obviously a tank destroyer to be in the TD line, but, I mean, they don't want to break the line of TDs. But what you could have done was given this way more penetration and put it at the 6.3 slot, but of course that messes with game balance, so I'm not going to insult them there. And by the way, if I didn't mention it before, this is going to be a very long video of grievances. This truck, again, it's something that you could slot in here and get rid of some of these absolutely useless double vehicles that essentially serve the same purpose, but with different vehicles. If you're looking at the Italians from just a starter vehicle, you have the AB41 that you've already seen, the Caro Modello L6 that you've already seen, the AB43. Now, let's look at this vehicle. It has the Mod 40 cannon. This gun was a secondary upgrade to the 47mm that the Italians had. It had a longer barrel, and it was also ported for a heavier AP round. And let's just talk about the armor-piercing rounds for the Italians in general. Now, if you're looking at this APBC round, an armor-piercing ballistic cap shell with high explosive in it, at 10 meters away, at 90 degrees from its target, it will penetrate 69 millimeters of armor, so almost 70. Now, if I look at the actual historical penetration charts for this specific gun, this very specific gun, the upgraded version of this weapon, the penetration value is, I think, at 100 meters, 70 millimeters. Now, considering that this weapon's penetration in-game at 100 meters is only 67, you're missing a whole 3 millimeters there, and then likely another 5 at 10 meters. So, in reality, this should probably penetrate around 73 millimeters of armor, but that has been taken from us. The other thing about this, and about the weaponry of these M14s, if I can just look at customization, they have the shorter gun, the 32 mod, which is, as you can see, a shorter breech and a shorter barrel, making it less accurate and obviously less penetration. Their AP round, in this, in-game, it's 53 millimeters of penetration, as opposed to the historical penetration at 100 meters being 58 millimeters with an AP round, a solid shot, or a solid shot with filler. So, you're losing a significant amount of penetration here. The fact that these two rounds are essentially identical, except for some long-range performance, but again, you're using a gun with 54 millimeters of pen. Realistically, it's not going to be something you use for long range, which is another reason why all of these very similar tanks were put into the game all at rank 1. You see, none of these, except for the M1542, make it to rank 2. And it's very obvious why that is. Their guns have limited penetration, and even the M1542 has that upgraded cannon, the longer cannon with the larger breech, the model 4740 Mod 38. And again, this vehicle, it's missing one of its major components, the penetration on the AP round, and then they're also missing, for the entire Italian tech tree of mediums, they're missing a 55mm pen heat round. Now, you may be asking, why is that strange? Why is that something that would matter? Well, considering that the penetration of these guns, of this weapon right here, of this 32 caliber cannon, is limited to under 55 millimeters, consider having a 55mm heat round. That completely precludes the need for this BC round, as the penetration at range is no longer a factor, since heat will detonate and break through 55mm of armor at any range. But this also overcomes the fact that Warthunder is cramming this lower area, even with a pair of reserve tanks. That is insane. And a medium that is premium. Like, I expected this to have the heat round, to carry that 55mm heat, but no, it does not. So I'm left wondering, why is this at 1.7? It's not a better tank, it doesn't have that good heat, and it doesn't even have the upgraded gun to give it that much little more armor-piercing penetration, which is already, may I add, below the historical averages for these weapons. But you may be saying, okay, that means nothing, it's just for game balance. Well, here's the thing about game balance. If you're going to balance a game like Warthunder where you have historical vehicles, you need to understand the time and period in which they were made, and then you need to understand how they fit historically versus, like, realistically in the game. And I completely understand that. I'm 100% willing to say that no, I wouldn't see the M1441 or the M1542 going up to 3.7, 3.3 just because of a measly heat round and a minor increase in armor piercing buff, but that's not the only thing. That is an important thing, by the way. It's important that they have that, but you're also looking at such minor improvements between the Mark 1, 2, 3, and the M1441 that in reality you could probably just have all of these be the two tanks. The first one being this model Mark 3 with the short gun and no heat. That could definitely be a great reserve tank. It's a great reserve tank. It really is. It's wonderful to play. It's fun. It's enjoyable. And people would love it, would fawn over it. But there's so many of them. And they're the same exact vehicle. It really is a nightmare. And then this could be what this was supposed to be. This vehicle doesn't need to exist. It is upgraded. Yes, it's upgraded with this armor. An extra 50mm plate. Well, not extra, but a 50mm plate right here. Which makes this much more difficult to kill, considering that this is a very good area to put 20mm machine guns. But problem number one is this little Barbiette. I think Gaijin really dropped the ball on this, because yeah, it's a weak point, but as the faceplate here was upgraded to 50mm, the outer armor on this was also increased. Even if it wasn't increased universally, like the sides could still be 30, but this cast armor piece and the cast armor protecting the inside should definitely be upgraded to 50mm, or at least 40 so that they have to penetrate a double layer. In either case, it just turns this vehicle into a death trap. And the other thing is that these vehicles did not have 25mm of side armor. They had 42. So you're looking at a vehicle that's been downgraded in armor because it has the same weak spot as it had at a reserve vehicle. It has almost uniformly lower than historical average penetrations, and the entire bonus that War Thunder gives you with this upgrade you've gained is a couple of jerry cans. I'm not joking. And you know why this is. It's because they have to make up for the fact that they're not including that 42mm of side armor. Because a lot of these vehicles were built with that, including these reserve tier vehicles. So were they given their accurate amount of side armor, they would become side-scraping kings. But obviously, the M14 shouldn't. But this, the M1542, should have that 42mm of side armor to go with this 50mm plate. That is 100% a historical vehicle that was an upgrade to this vehicle that needs to be added. It makes this vehicle viable. It makes up for the weakness of the gun and the Barbiette. The ability to side scrape in this game is crucial, incredibly important. And the vehicle's underperformance in armor penetration, as well as their lack of any rounds apart from APBC at this tier, just this simple APBC. No heat, no APC, no, obviously not APCR, but no solid shot, since the Italians did use solid shot AP. which is where I'm getting my numbers from, is solid shot AP. But still, it's forgivable and understandable, but it really is a problem that I'm going to have to harp on because it makes all the issues with this huge gap, like, it makes sense. Because if you gave all those upgrades to this vehicle, including the heat and the AP, you could put it at 3.3, and then it has a domino effect. The P40 could be upgraded, so this Leoncello would stay at the same BR with its same rounds, and then this P40 could be put all the way up to 4.0 or 4.3, and then guess what? You could give its gun the correct penetration value, which is not 75 millimeters, but rather a significantly higher amount, probably around 90 millimeters. Not saying that that is entirely logical with game, but that is historically accurate, and it would put it at 4.7 pretty comfortably. And with a 100 millimeter heat round and a 90 millimeter AP round, you're not going to be worrying about things like KV1s and KV1Ss, because the 100 millimeter heat takes care of them at range, and the APBC can clean them up close range very, very quickly. Not to mention the P40's armor is 100% able to handle stuff if you side scrape. If you side scrape with the P40, you can keep this side very strong because it has the structural steel here, a very strong undercarriage, and then a doubly sloped, a little bit like a T-34, sloped inward and then sloped backward. Very thick upper glacis here. 50 millimeters of upper armor. This could probably be increased a little bit. Not saying that it's historically accurate. That's the correct number. That's right. But if you side scrape here, you can increase this hatch to significantly thicker than it should be. You can increase the frontal armor to about 80 millimeters all along. And then really your only weak spots are going to be your turret, which again is not that bad because the Italians have this trolley gun mantlet plus gun shield. And then 50 millimeters of faceplate armor. And it's a good vehicle. It's got great depression. You could engage from angles like this, where you don't, even if you were to side scrape at an angle like this, you're looking at almost 90 millimeters of armor in the mid plate, which is great. Really good. Awesome tank. Were it to have the historical penetration values, it could definitely fit at a much higher BR. And here's where I get to my main issue. I don't have a problem with this light tank line. As far as most things go, I don't have a problem with the anti-air line. I'm very glad that they added this M42 in. I was very upset when I saw that they didn't have it in the testing server. I'm like, where is like the one and only very important Italian anti-aircraft vehicle that was self-propelled? There it is. Thank you, Warthunder. But this is unacceptable. And you might say I'm overreacting, you might say this is a little bit ridiculous, but this is unacceptable. This is almost an insult to put a cobbled together, like, horrible vehicle. At 4.7, I'm sure it's going to be wonderful, but it doesn't belong here. It's not Italian made, number one. And yeah, that may not be an issue to some people, but it's an issue for me. It's not a heavy tank, which the Italians could field here. Beyond the P40, there are two more vehicles which could both fit here and went through prototype stages. Built? No. Prototype? Yes. Definitely could have been built? Yes. Definitely had all the equipment they needed to produce them? Yes. Time? Not so much. This thing? This is not an answer. This is what happens when you try to make an American Italian tree, which is a bad idea in and of itself, because you get vehicles like this that are not, like, historically, this is not even a vehicle that you would see ever. This is a bastardization of what it really should have been. And it's awful because of it. And I'm sure people are going to say I'm ridiculous. This is a great vehicle and it's going to fit very well in the game. Well, guess what? It's not an Italian vehicle. And it does not fit in this tree. With the other vehicles at this tier, which, by the way, are none, because 4.7 has no Italians. neither does 5.7, actually, so you have a huge gap here in the BRs, which, again, they're going to either fill up with Americans or fill up with the actual vehicles that I'm recommending, which are, by the way, the P46 and the P49 or the P50, Leoncello? I think it's the P50. Oh, Lord. I'm going to have to look it up later. But more on that later. That's going to be on my vehicles that I think should be added here. And first off, removing this, you can keep this. It has an Italian gun, which is the only reason I'm allowing this. If there were to be some more changes made to it, maybe a little bit more flare. Obviously, the gun port's been covered over. The upper glacis is the same. The gun has been changed to an Italian gun. That is a good way of doing it. Not just saying, oh, this one vehicle has a bunch of different things and it kind of was a composite of Italian and American and French. No, don't do that. That's wrong. This is also wrong. Having a Lend-Lease vehicle that actually invaded Italy as an Italian vehicle. That is not okay. Okay, that is not gonna fly. And it really shouldn't, because this is not what they need. They need the vehicle that should be here, which is the P50 and the P48, which are both heavy tanks. And I mean heavy tanks. The P49, or P48, I think, is essentially what happens when you take a P40 and you beef the crap out of it. Almost add about 15 millimeters to this upper glacis, increase its height by a significant amount, and give it that 90 millimeter AT gun that the Semavente da 90 mil has, with about the same size barrel. Actually, it's not any longer than that. And that is a wonderful tank-destroying, heavy vehicle with a lot of armor, tons of potential for side-scraping and bounces, and a long-range, very nice piece, a little bit like the German 88, but obviously very, very toned down. If you look at 4.7, well, there aren't a ton for the Germans, but you're looking at Jagdpanzers and Stugs, but there's not a lot of heavy tanks. But if you think about things like the 88mm flak gun and the Dicker Max, it's as if you took a Tiger, made it a little bit more nerfed, and then nerfed the crap out of its gun. And I think that 100% fits at 4.7. And then you go up to 6.0. I don't think you can go straight from 5.0 or 5.3 all the way to 7.0, but you possibly could, depending on how good they make this P50. Because the P50 is armed with a very long version of this gun. This is the Canona Asando 105mm. Now this, I could see 100% fitting inside of a tank turret, and the P49, or the P50, is essentially a Tiger II toned down very much so as a Tiger II toned down with a different style turret, a little bit more like a Panther. It's like a heavy Panther, really. And it has the same very nice 120mm heat, and then it would have a much higher velocity APBC round, and maybe an APBC BC round, or an APC BC round, that would give it a little more penetration, say, maybe 110mm. Maybe this could even have 135mm with some heavy drop-off, like a solid AP shot, and then this heat is good at long range. But still, it's a very heavily armed vehicle that would fit perfectly in the non-meta that you have at 7.0. And then obviously you move up to the QF40 and the QF40 Mark II, which are the same vehicle, but one has APFSDS, right? Yeah. Oh, no. Oh, yeah. Say about DM23, which is, by the way, a German round, which is... I guess you can't avoid it past the Cold War. You can't really avoid some mixing after the Cold War, but, you know, it's just a pain. Again, over here, I have a problem with this Fiat Ansaldo M1139. It's a great vehicle. It was a decent idea when they came up with it, but again, the penetration values are off, and it really kills this gun. 39mm of pen, you're not going to get through anything at your tier, much less things above you. And we've already been over the fact that this thing It just doesn't have enough penetration, and its lack of performance damages it because of its real lack of versatility. It's a casemate that is dealing with the same penetration as a vehicle with far more maneuverability and in some cases more armor, because you can't side scrape with this and still fire your gun. And now we move on to the heart, to the pride and joy of the Italian tech tree. And I mean that, pride and joy. I love these so much. I'm so happy with these. They got this right. I suppose they got it right. I don't know exactly what they were thinking when they got this. It's not bad. You could change things about it because it's essentially the same thing as this. Again, these two and this are the frigging same. There's just a minor upgrade between each of them. I think you could combine these into the same vehicle and then make them swap places. Give this all the upgrades that, or well, obviously you'd have the short in one place, and then the larger one with the longer gun and the better speed up top, and have it have the same armor. And then you get to the 105, again, as you saw, wonderful, perfect heat round, 120 millimeters, exactly how the historical model puts it, and 90 millimeter AP, which they didn't even really use because the high explosive was so great. And then if you look up at 4.0, you really shouldn't be using this gun, but considering that it does have a little bit, well, actually, this has less penetration than the 75 millimeter before it. So again, the AP for this needs to be changed to fit more in line with what the P40 Leoncello could actually do. But again, it has that nice 100 millimeter heat, which is just good for it. And yet again, these are definitely separate vehicles. These two have different guns, different effective thicknesses, and one big issue with these ones: this spaced armor, or what should be spaced armor, does not work. Or at least in game, I have not seen it effectively work thus far. This has negative 10 millimeters, negative 10 degrees of gun depression. So let's look at, you're looking at almost 30 millimeters of add-on armor, and then if you look at the back, 76 millimeters of armor. So 30 plus 76, you're looking at 106 millimeters. All right, great, right? So let's look at protection analysis. Let's try against its own heat round, because, you know, should penetrate. Oh wait, no. Let's try against the other vehicle's heat rounds, because that should go through exactly 100 millimeters of armor, right? All right. Well, I stand corrected. They fixed it. Hey! Okay, I tried that yesterday, and it did not work at all. I could not get it to fix itself. Okay, looks like they fixed it. Check plus for Warthunder. Good job getting to me before I can even get to you. Should have made this yesterday and complained about it before then, so you couldn't get to it before I got to it. Lucky ducks. Alright. Well, no complaints with this thing's spaced armor then. I suppose that kind of gets rid of the other problem I had with these, which is how their armor is done. Now, let's look at the Semavente 90mm M36B1. Also known as a shitty Sherman chassis with a Wolverine turret. Did I ask for this? I didn't ask for this. I'm pretty sure I didn't ask for this. So let's look at the penetration. Oh, it's got APCR that penetrates 171 millimeters. Well, ain't that just special? Isn't that just special? Oh wait, that's a little strange. It seemed to 6.3. That other one was 6.7. Oh, it's APCR. Oh, it doesn't even penetrate at 500 meters what this thing can penetrate. Okay, so it's a worse gun on a vehicle at a higher BR with less armor. Why am I not playing the Jagdpanther more? Seriously. This is obviously put here to be a nice cap to your tank destroyer line, so you can feel accomplished about it and feel like you've made it all the way up here, and you get a very lackluster vehicle that combines, good elements, but it combines the wrong elements of each tank. The Sherman is known for its trolley turret most of the time. Its huge faceplate and sometimes lack of a weak spot makes it very difficult to penetrate the turret. But they've done the opposite here. They've put a very penetrable turret, well, maybe not penetrable in this case, as you can see, It's a very thick turret piece, but things will get through this at 6.3 in no time. And with a very weak chassis, 95 millimeters, this is not safe at all. And considering its speed is not the same as the original Wolverine, matter of fact, it's far less than the Wolverine's, this vehicle is a colossal letdown in my opinion. And again, it's made from this whole idea of cobbling together American tanks that should have, been on hand at the end of World War II, that the Italians apparently came across and decided, oh, we should really cannibalize a wonderful tank destroyer and a pretty decent tank to make this abomination. Because that makes sense. It doesn't. It's a horrible idea. It's just not okay. And again, there's other vehicles that could take this thing's place. Otherwise, I wouldn't be complaining. I would not bitch about this if there wasn't something to complain about. And there is. There's better vehicles to take this thing's place. This. If you gave it more AP damage, obviously, I'm working off of some slightly fudged numbers, but with an APCR round, this thing could penetrate almost 250 millimeters of armor. At very close range, obviously, and not on sloped armor. But if you were to have this, say, with an upgraded engine or an upgraded gun, or maybe even a Semivente Da 90. Oh, wait, that exists already. It's this. But there is another, far away. It's a vehicle that I really thought that they would add, because as you notice here, there's not a single Italian derp gun. And I thought, oh, they're just going to put in heat so that it'll make up for the fact that there's no derpiness. There's no odd vehicles in here that seem to stand out for the fact that they can fire a huge high explosive round. And in some cases they have, with the 105mm heat on the M43. But the thing is, with the M43, it still is a good penetrator. Like, you don't have to rely on its explosive mass to kill a tank. But there was one tank destroyer that did rely on its explosive mass. There was a Italian artillery piece of 149 millimeters in caliber. A little ridiculous, yes, but it was built the same way this one was. Able to elevate and depress a little bit, but mostly used for indirect fire. But it did have penetration charts for both high explosive and for an NAP round, meaning that at one point, this was used for direct fire on enemy vehicles. And the AP on that, considering that it's almost double the caliber of this 90mm, and probably twice the velocity considering its length, it was literally the size of this entire tank was the gun barrel. And then the platform was all the way at the back, and it was raised and lowered from a solid, pivot point. This vehicle is not as good as it could be. And the high explosive from that would put the KV-2 to shame. I'll guarantee you, for two reasons. It'd be easier to aim because of its higher velocity, and it would have a ton of explosive mass, like this 90mm, would have an incredible amount of explosive mass. However, it would also be easier to aim because of its velocity. It would be able to fire in indirect fire. If you were very, very far away, you could calculate distance and fire quite accurately with an almost artillery-like gun to cause damage, track your opponent, and then load up your second shot and fire again. Again, limitations to ammunition could be solved the same way they were in this. It's got eight rounds of ammo. Great. 8 rounds of ammo. How many are in the 104mm? Probably around 6 to 8, actually. Almost the same. So, something else could definitely go here. Something better. I have no problems with the automatic. I have no problems with the sedan. I actually like both of these because they're Italian-made. I also like this one because it's mostly Italian-made. These armored cars were actually what I expected to find in this tank tree. Was a lot of armored car tank destroyers. Which I was like, oh yeah, great. Cold War tank destroyers. What I didn't expect was for them to be, well, I suppose I think you could move these down a little bit. Just to make the gap between 6.3 and 4.0 a little bit smaller. Move this maybe down to 5.7, this one down to 6.3. And then obviously lower all these just by a little bit, and then you could make room for a new tank destroyer. Or even better, you could get rid of all of these crappy knockoffs of the same vehicle and these crappy American vehicles, shove them down a couple BRs, and then put the C1 Ariete. Why not actually put the 1 MBT that was actually Italian manufactured? Why? Well, you have the M1 Abrams in the game. You have the best tank to exist in the world today. This is a 10.0 vehicle. And the first reason that I heard for people saying that, oh no, we shouldn't add the C1 Arietta in the game, it's too good. It's too good for us. It's too good for us? Look at this. 800 millimeters of NERA. 800 millimeters. 600 millimeters. Solid inside armor. Single driver. No ammo racking. Blowout panel. Gas turbine engine. This is not... If this isn't too good for your average player who can grind all the way up to 10.0, if this is not too good for you, the C1 Arietta is not at all too good for you. It is a perfect vehicle for the 9.0 meta. And if they don't add it, I don't know what they're going to use for the Italian 9.0s. There's nothing else. Unless you want to put a Leopard here, which is a bad idea. I will say right now that it would be a terrible idea to put a Leopard here. They look almost the same already. Why go add insult to injury by adding the vehicle that you've already been working with for the past 2 BRs into the game for no reason? Add something new. Something that has armor. Nothing at this high level has any armor to protect itself against enemy guns. Nothing. Not a single one of these QFs, or the Centauro, or the Romar can stop enemy rounds. The C1, Arietta, 100% can. Stop them cold. No problem. It's got good composite, it's got good speed, it's got modern rounds, it could fit at 9.0, it could fit at 10.0, it could fit along with these other 9.7s and 9.0s when the QF Mark IIA is going to falter and fall apart at 9.0, at 10.0, where this is going to be put almost every time. I will guarantee you this will be shafted at 10.0 a ton of the time. And I'm sure they will add things here. I'm not going to lie, I was disappointed almost as much as I was elated. I was so much more happy that we got these in the game finally than I was upset about the many, many historical deviations that Warthunder had taken, along with the many American vehicles that were stashed in my Italian tank tree. And if you'll allow me a little vent, I don't think any of this will matter. I think that the changes will be made, things will be added, I'm sure people will love it, and go on with their day. I just hope that the vehicles that deserve to be here, and the changes that deserve to be made to make this low tier fun and enjoyable, and not just playing the Panzer II in 3 different reskins over and over and over again. I like the Panzer II. I don't like the Panzer II, the Panzer II, the Panzer II, the Panzer II, and the Panzer II again. They're all the same. And it's not fun. Make some changes. It deserves to be fixed because they're good vehicles. And you can't slight them for that. Whew. I think that's everything. I think that's everything. Well, that's been enough from me. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I know I've been waiting to do this for a long, long time. And now that I have, it's incredibly liberating. So I hope this gets somewhere. I hope these changes are made. And I hope you enjoyed this video, of course. And I hope you have a wonderful day.